Hello everyone, this is Jotto and welcome to the Hearthstone Weekly Show, episode 61. And for this week I'm doing my overview on the Construct Quarter and its constructed uses. Now, before we start, I apologize for this episode being late. I did make an announcement yesterday that it would be, and it's been 2 days now. It's just been rather hectic. So, the point is I got it out now, so that's a good thing. In other news, Acebreakers, my team, is currently recruiting. We're looking for a legend rank player who's got decent sort of tournament finishes and such like that. I made a post about it on Hearthstone. I'll put the link to that particular post in the description, so if you're interested in joining the team, then put your application in there and I'll be looking at them for the next week. I'll also make an announcement on Versus Series because that goes up on Hearthstone as well. Anyway, without further ado, let's get started, shall we? So for this week, I'm not really going to go over the bosses or heroics or anything because everyone knows really what's good or bad with them and things like that. We got 4 bosses this week. There were some pretty good ones. Then there was Patchwork, which was a first try on normal and heroic. It's not very difficult to figure out Patchwork. Anyway, but the other guides have been done for that, and other people have done better guides than I can for those kinds of things. So if you want to go check that stuff out, go on the front page of Hearthstone. It's all sort of nice and assembled over there. Anyway, so first card we're going to be talking about is the Undertaker. Now, Undertaker has been pretty much just as good as I thought he would be. He's not the best one drop in the game. He's the second best one drop in the game after Mana Worm. But anyway, Undertaker with the correct opening is absolutely brutal. Absolutely brutal. You can get a 2-3 on turn 1 that turns into a 3-4 and then a 4-5 on turn 3. It's crazy. To be honest, a lot of people are kind of underwhelmed with him, but what do you expect from a 1-drop? He's not going to win the game on his own. Sometimes he does, but he's not going to win the game on his own because he's a 1-drop. Like, you can't... An overpowered 1-drop does not show as being overpowered by the fact that it wins the game on its own. That's not the point. The point is that it's a 1-drop with very, very good stats for... It's got good stats for its ability. It's a grow type ability on a 2 health base minion. And that makes it good by default. You don't need to work too hard on the death rattles, especially in Zoo. You've got Creepers, Egg, Harvest Golem, and you can also play a couple other random ones like Death Lord. Some people have been playing Zombie Chow, not so much. It's got too big of a drawback, but there's a couple you can mess around with. And Undertaker itself is very, very powerful. The other decks I've been using it quite a lot have been Hunter, Rush type decks, which are running Undertaker, Web Spinner, Leper Gnome, Creeper, those kinds of cards, and it works out pretty well. You get 3 1-drops in that deck when it normally only has 1 with Abusive Sergeant in the previous version, but that wasn't really a 1-drop, that was a boost. So the deck is a lot faster than it used to be, and Undertaker is part of that. Now, if we move on to the Zombie Chow is not as good as a lot of people thought it would be. Me and Birdie hit it on the head basically as to how good this card would be in the set review. We said it would be good in the tempo decks that want the turn 1 play, but not so much in the aggro decks. And we were right. The deck that uses it the best is Priest, which is kind of hilarious. But anyway, it uses it mostly for the early game. I know a bunch of people have been doing the combo-y thing and things like that, but no, it's actually just a solid 1 mana 2-3 on turn 1 that you can heal. It's a good 1-drop for the Priest deck. The other deck that might use it is Shaman, but Shaman's kind of miserable right now, partly because of the popularity of Hunter. But yeah, Shaman's pretty miserable right now. It's either getting beaten by Miracle Rogue or Hunter, depending on the metagame. And at the moment, Miracle's still the best deck, but no one's playing it. So you'd think, hey, they get their time in the sun. No, Hunter. They're always going to be middle of the pack. And at the moment, they're pretty low on the pack, actually, because their main bad matchups are the 2 best decks, which causes some serious playability issues, especially when it comes to tournaments. But anyway, Zombie Chow has been just a tempo card. It's not really much to talk about because its Death Rattle is a massive drawback in aggro, so you only play it in the tempo decks. Some people have been playing it in Paladin mid-range as well, though I'm not sure if you need a 1-drop in that deck, but a lot of people have been using it to moderate success. Now, on to Wailing Soul. Wailing Soul, as you notice, I'm leaving Mad Scientist for last as opposed to for the neutrals. Now, Wailing Soul is just as good as I think people expected. It's not blowing anyone away, but some people are liking it, trying to try it out with Watchers. I've tried it out with Ancient Watcher and Deathlord and such. It's actually quite interesting. It's definitely quite good in some of the decks like Handlock, although Handlock has kind of died off. You can make like a mid-rangey Handlock with Ancient Watchers as opposed to the Twilight Drakes and things like that. You know, your Ancient Watchers, your Giants, and then Void Callers and things like that. That kind of deck has been popping up a little bit, although I think Handlock is just bad at the moment. But the other decks I've been trying out have mostly been Druid Watchers with Death Lords or without Death Lords, and trying with Mark of the Wild and Sun Furies and things like that. And it's been okay. I think it's a tier 2 deck. I'm not sure how good it is. Someone might come up with a really, really good sort of soul shell, but for now I think it's just decent. The body is quite good on it though. A 4 mana 3/5 is nothing to be sniffed at. So I'm not sure exactly how good it is, but it's definitely got its place, and I'm pretty happy with how it's come out. It's not overpowered, it's not underpowered, it's just decent, which, I mean, is an okay place for a card. Now, onto a card which is not decent. It's completely overpowered, actually. Basically, Mad Scientist has completely broken the metagame on its own. It's a little crazy. I did try Mad Scientist with Duplicate and things like that, and it's actually really, really strong. I'm not playing it right now on ladder because Hunter. All the Hunters are playing Double Flare, and Hunter is just a stronger Secret deck anyway, at the moment at least, because it has access to Double Flare, so it's better in the Secret Mirror matches. So I'm playing Hunter at the moment with Mad Scientists, and I am gonna play the Dupes Mage once, you know, the Hunter sort of dies off in popularity a bit. Because Mad Scientist with Mage is actually a ton of fun. You get a lot of free draw from it and a lot of sustainability. But Mad Scientist and Hunter just does unfair things. It really does. You kill it, you can get a freezing, bounces guy back, and you did this with a 2-drop. You don't waste the secret. It comes out of your deck. You don't pay mana for it. You don't pay a card for it. If you're worried about milling yourself, don't be, because you can't fit tracking into a deck right now, so you're going to mill yourself just as fast anyway. And yeah, the whole tracking thing, I actually think tracking is an amazing card. It's practically overpowered. However, at the moment, the Mad Scientist decks don't have any room for draw spells. They can only run 2 draw spells, which I think is one of the main problems with the deck, but you just can't fit them in. I've tried. You need to, basically, draw spells increase your consistency, but to add 2 draw spells into a Mad Scientist deck, because there's so many cards you need, you actually have to reduce your consistency, so it's like, there's not even a point of having a draw spell, even if it is tracking, as good as tracking. The reason why you're running Flare over tracking in general right now is simply because of all the Hunters. You need the Flare for the secret removal. That's basically it. If you get Flare for secret removal, you're in a good spot. Tracking is inherently stronger than Flare, however, if there's so many secrets, Flare is just better. And I would like to play with tracking right now, but I just can't. I tried to put it in, and I had to remove like a Flare for a tracking, and it's just not worth it. So the Mad Scientist decks, you don't really mill yourself by doing it. You just put the secret into play. It's like an incredibly overpowered Loot Hoarder if you think about it. Loot Hoarder is a 2 mana 2/1 that draws you a card that you then have to spend mana on. Mad Scientist is a 2 mana 2/2 that draws a card, plays it on your opponent's turn, and it has to be one of a certain amount of cards, which means you can tutor for stuff. Which is absolutely crazy. It's such a power level increase over Loot Hoarder. It's not even close. It's just absurd. I don't really know what they were thinking when they made Mad Scientist as a 2/2. I think it should be a 2/1 given its effect. But it's pretty broken. And a lot of people have been running it with Ice Block, and they were hyping it up for Ice Block. I'm saying, don't run this with Ice Block. It's an aggressive card. It gives you aggression on the early turns, so if you run it with Ice Block, then the Ice Block sits there for the next 15 turns until you're losing, and then you live one more turn after you're going to lose anyway. There's a flaw in logic there, but I don't see the point in running it in defensive decks. I think you should be running it in offensive decks, so duplicate aggro mages, the mid-range hunters that want an edge in terms of speed, running Mad Scientist and 4 secrets and then bow. They're a lot faster than the other hunter decks, and I think that's why they're stronger right now. It means they're better against the rush decks that are actually quite good against hunter mid-range. And things like Rush Hunter also want to be using it. I think Paladin on Wednesday, when Echoing Ooze and Avenge come out and things like that, you're going to want to run Mad Scientist in that deck as well, because you can just flood the board and just sustain yourself without putting cards into your hand, so it doesn't disrupt your own Divine Favors. If they kill it, puts it onto the board, it doesn't disrupt your Divine Favor. You still drew a card and played it though. So it's actually very, very powerful in Paladin. I should imagine that we're going to see some sort of Avenge-based aggro Paladin come Wednesday. But anyway, so that was basically the best card from the wing that affected the metagame at least. Now, next we're going to be going over Stalag and Fugen. I'll just start with Fugen because he's the decent one. Now, Stalag and Fugen have done nothing. They're too slow. They're too slow. The 4/7 is playable and pretty powerful. The problem is Spectral Knight is around, so you just can't run Fugen just based on his stats. And Stalag is completely useless. So basically, there's not much to talk about there, but it's too slow. You need to draw two dependent cards on each other, and if one of them gets hexed or polymorphed, then you don't get Thaddeus because one of them doesn't die. And then if the second one gets silenced, you don't get Thaddeus, and you combo pieces with Reincarnate, and it's just absurd. There's way too many combo disruptors for Fugen and Stalag right now, and even if you get Thaddeus, he's not unkillable. So, I don't like them, and no one else really likes them. They seem to be doing pretty much nothing at the moment, and I should expect them to continue to do nothing. And that's pretty much all we can talk about. I mean, Stalag dies to Soulfire and Swipe, for crying out loud. He just doesn't do anything. And that's a problem. But anyway, on to the last two cards. We'll start with Deathbite. Deathbite? Yeah, Deathbite. Now, Deathbite is True Silver. I think it's actually better than True Silver now. I still think True Silver impacts the class more than Deathbite does. Warrior benefits a lot from Deathbite, but they don't need it, whereas True Silver is actually needed by the class, and if it was missing, Paladin would be infinitely worse than it is. So, Deathbite in a vacuum, I'm still going to maintain it's stronger than True Silver, but True Silver matters more to the class. And Deathbite's actually pretty insane. It kills Loatheb when it's already been used once, which is a big deal. Loatheb is in every deck right now. And the Whirlwind benefits you quite a lot, and it actually cuts down things like Creeper very, very easily, which is important. And it also kills Leok and Huffer, and it kills the entire Leok, Huffer, Misha. It kills the entire Animal Companion thing, although killing a Huffer is kind of annoying because you take 8. But it kills the entire Animal Companion set, which is actually quite important with all the hunters going around, and it breaks through a taunted Haunted Creeper. Yeah, a Haunted Creeper, because that only has 4 life, and then if the Haunted Creeper was played first, the Deathbite Whirlwind actually kills the Creeper completely, which is a big deal. And there's just a lot of things it does that Warrior really didn't have before. The fact that it can kill sticky minions now, which it just couldn't. So double Deathbite is actually a game-winning draw. Same with double True Silver. I mean, if you've ever played against double True Silver, you know how hard it is to beat 2 4-mana 4/2 weapons. And Deathbite kind of fits in that sort of bracket, and it's very, very hard to beat if you draw 2. Drawing 1 is amazing. If you don't draw any, you really do notice the difference. It's actually quite amusing. So Deathbite, very, very good card. I'm not sure how it fits on the class spectrum. I actually think Dark Cultist is the strongest class card, and then maybe Web Spinner and Deathbite are kind of on the same level, because Deathbite's more impacting, but that's because it's 4 mana, whereas Web Spinner is a 1-drop and it's kind of revived the deck almost on its own. So the class cards are pretty good so far. There's been a couple that have just been useless, like Anabar Ambusher, but the rest of them have been pretty good in general. Anyway, on to the last card for this week, and the 4th last card in Naxxramas. Actually, there's only 3 coming out on Wednesday. Dark Cultist, the most overpowered 3-drop in the entire game. By far. Now, I've noticed that Priest has this weird thing where if they don't draw Dark Cultist, then they can't kill you, and if they draw Dark Cultist, then it's difficult not to die. It's weird like that. Dark Cultist is incredibly overpowered and is incredibly, incredibly good against hunters. It's actually one of the things where a lot of people playing Priest right now against Hunter because the matchup is slightly favored in Priest. And if they draw Cultist, they always win, more or less, unless their hand is absolutely terrible. If they have turn 3 or turn 2 Cultist with coin, they usually win. If they don't, it kind of swings back in the Hunter favor a little bit. So it's the kind of thing where, how do you deal with a Dark Cultist efficiently? For a Hunter, you need to have Bow or like a Lucky Animal Companion or something like that. For most classes, you need to spend 4 mana and 2 for 1 yourself, and some classes just can't kill it. The only class that can actually kill one efficiently is Priest, which is kind of funny. Shadow Word Pain says what's up, and it also and the Shadow Words also negate the health of the creature. Instead, it's their attack that matters, so the buff actually is nowhere near as powerful against Priest. So it's that kind of thing where it's Priest works the best against Cultist, but Cultist is a Priest card. I actually do think Priest has its place in the metagame right now, and Dark Cultist is the reason why the card is very, very overpowered. I'm not sure how I feel about one class being terrible besides Dark Cultist, which is just broken. It kind of reminds me of 2 mana Unleash the Hounds, where the class was terrible, and then Unleash the Hounds was stupidly overpowered. And it kind of reminds me of that. And I'm not a big fan of the way they sort of handled it in this situation. I'd rather they give the class more options as opposed to give it a sledgehammer on turn 3. So it's a little sketchy how they handled it, although I think it has balanced out the class a decent amount on its own. Anyway, so that's pretty much the entire Construct quarter. It's the most important quarter we've had so far. And it introduced, I think, pretty much every card apart from Fugen and Stalag are constructed playable. Both class cards are very, very powerful. Undertaker, Zombie Chow, Wailing Soul, and Mad Scientist are seeing varying amounts of play from a little bit in niche decks to like a lot in almost everything. So it's a decent sort of spectrum of looking at things, and I think they did quite well with this quarter. I would say, or wing, or quarter, or whatever. Although I would say that it's kind of weird that they put all the good cards in one wing and then put all the miserable ones in some of the other ones. Like last week, we didn't really get anything apart from Spectral Knight, which isn't seeing much play right now because it's not a mid-rangey format. It's quite fast, so it just doesn't do as nearly as much as it should be. So we didn't get anything last week. We kind of had a 2-week break from Loatheb to Construct Quarter, which is quite funny. Next week we are getting Kel'Thuzad and Ooze and Shade. Shade I don't think is going to see any play. Ooze will probably see quite a bit in Paladin. And Kel'Thuzad will probably see a lot in Shaman, but Shaman's quite miserable right now because of Hunter. But they do abuse Kel'Thuzad quite a lot, so maybe when Hunter dies down a bit, we're going to see some Kel'Thuzad Shamans just destroying people, and that would be interesting. Probably quite miserable after you played against it a bunch because of all the combos going off, but quite funny to see the first time, and maybe quite fun. Anyway, thank you all for watching. If you like the content, please subscribe. If you have any feedback, put it in the comment section below. As I said, if you're interested in joining Acebreakers, then I will put the link to the forum post in the description. You can go check it out over there. And I'll be checking that post for the next week until I find someone. And then I will sort of just abandon it and just not even look at it anymore. But anyway, as for now, this has been Jotto, signing off.